Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for stopping in at the Red Barn. Last episode we got started on the exhaust for the Ferrari Swap 914. In this episode I'm back on that 100%, seeing how much progress I can make towards completing that. And then we're going to take a quick check-in on the kitties at the end. Hope you enjoy. Well, I was so happy with how that muffler fixture worked out to locate the exhaust tips that I figured I'd go ahead and use that same technique and make up a fixture for the front side of everything. So I just went ahead and set something up here on the fixture table that locates the dimension of the offset tube and the dimension of the centered tube, and got the handy dandy calipers and captured that dimension, updated the CAD file, and just made this piece. I've got a center cut marked on it so I can easily see where the center of this all is. So let's go ahead and put this in the car and I'll show you how this works. All right, and so here's how this goes. The rear hanger's in, and this 1-inch bar is clamped in place at an approximate height. So I can just kind of hang the mufflers in there. Grabs here and here. And that locates the front of the mufflers where I want them. The good news about the mount is it's holding the mufflers parallel to each other and square to the chassis. So the eyeball challenge is with all these different dimensions and the transmission. This is one of those things where you guys have seen in the previous episodes, I agonize over the visual aspects of this, and I don't know that anybody's ever going to look that closely. What's most important is from back here, you can see this isn't quite rotated correctly. It needs to tip a little more clockwise. That one maybe a little counterclockwise, hard to see. But what's most important are things like, you can see this gap is a little bit less than this gap, and that can be because of the bumper, it can be because of all kinds of stuff. So we'll play around with all that when it comes time to get the mounts all figured out. But essentially, this should, famous last words, should make this easier to get these tubes fit. So we're going to go to work on making, as I call them, the connected dot pieces. All right, after much messing around, Martin has come by. Say hi, Martin. There's Martin. So what do we do? We've got the plan laid out. And then I mentioned this in another episode. This tool is a plate with 2 pins put in it and a slit. And the nice thing about this is it works on any dimension, any radius tube. And by putting the pins on the outside of the radius, the slit always points at the center line, or rather the center of the radius. So what Martin is doing now is simply pre-marking the tool in a bunch of different, or pre-marking this tube in a bunch of different places, because we don't know exactly which of those cuts is going to be the magic cut. And so what this provides is, you can see what's happened here. If this was a cut that was already made, which it was, and we wanted to come back later on and make another cut that was completely square to the center line radius point, the tool doesn't work. And yeah, you can get a pretty good guesstimate of it, but what Martin's doing now is just giving us the chance to mark a whole bunch of places, so that no matter what, if we miss by a little bit, right, and this starts to give us the options for where that offset goes. Now what he's not doing here is he's not showing you the fact that the V-band is going to go right smack in the middle of this join. So we know it's not going to be a complete weld up there, but this is just the process. Cut and fit and cut and fit and cut and fit. Unlike the headers where we had a plastic model to go after, I didn't want to go ahead and spend the money for the 2.5-inch kit just to model this up when it's fun to put Martin through this.
All right, let's mock this up.
So now the other thing we did is on the header, if I take you in here, we split a piece of tube. You can see that's been split on that side. So we have not a jig as much as a place to rest, so we only have to wrestle one end of the tube at a time. Well, and many hours later, it's just really difficult to film this kind of stuff because there's just so much back and forth and in and out and fit and fit. And this doesn't do it justice because there's a lot of stuff in the way. But now what's going on here is we split a tube to serve as a temporary fixture to hold that piece in, coming off the header. And then it was an S-bend into where the V-band's going to be. And the V-band's going to live right here. And it doesn't look like much. You know, it is just an exhaust. But if you come around here, this is kind of, you'll never see this, but, you know, you've got the lovely header. This obviously won't be stepped out. You know, this won't be stepped out like this. There'll just be a weld seam right about in here where that hose clamp is. But what looks kind of cool is it's got that rake, and it's almost the same angle as the back of the car. Not that you'll ever see that view, but there it is. And it's just tedious to get all these things. It looks like it'd be simple, but this was, you know, 4 hours of changing our minds and moving things around and all that good stuff. And so now to duplicate it on this side, except to remember that that header is shorter because of the cylinder offset. So we've accounted for that in the calculations. And then what's probably going to happen is there'll be a saddle made that welds onto this part of the exhaust tip with some tabs. And then I'll make another bracket similar to this, but nicer looking, that'll bolt on to these factory 360 mounts. And that'll be fun because I can play with some style points for that too. So anyway, that's side one-ish. On to side two. Well, guess what? I changed my mind. Imagine that. You know, having that S-bend in here and looking at it, there's really nothing other than that big arch of a curve. So I am stepping up a ladder here to give you the bird's eye view of this engine bay. The headers are curvy, but you can't see that they curve. And that S-bend right in there just didn't sit well with me. Now, in the perfect world, I could get that pipe to come straight back and parallel that transmission mount, but it's just not going to fit. And what you can see here is, can you see that? The muffler is now not square to the car anymore. It's canted in. And what I ended up doing to make that a little easier is, I'm just going to take you down in here. I drilled a bunch of offset holes in my fixture so that I could, you know, scoot it one way or the other. And what that does is that gets the muffler, forget that, everything's been pushed off to that side. So it's even more exaggerated. So pay no attention to the right side. But this is what it's going to end up looking like, I think, at least at this point. So again, not that you'll ever see this view, but this really matches the body line of the car. And the other thing that I realized as I was playing with this one is, you know, I was poking fun at myself saying, hey, that V-band's got to go back here. But it's worse than that, because as I'm sitting here looking at this, I got to get the shock bolt off at some point, and I got to get the axles out at some point, which means that I'd either have to drop the header, and I ain't doing that, or what's going to happen now is the V-band is going to go probably right about there, so that I'll have to drop the muffler from the V-band back to pull out the axles or service the shocks. But that's not horrible. So I think that's where we're headed. So anyway, this is the latest thinking. And the other thing is it greatly simplifies it, because I only have to do one slightly rotated bend right off the header and we're done. And this is just a straight shot, so it's easy to get the V-bend in there. There's no weirdness going on. And away we go. The other thing that's better about this design, by the way, is the closer the muffler gets to the transmission, the less dramatic this mount has to be. in terms of how far out it's, leveraged it and all that good stuff. So, you can see I've moved this thing over, gosh, at least an inch. So if I was to pick up something here and come down, it's just a short little bracket. So that's better too. So as usual, I like the latest design the best. Let's see how long this one lasts. Well, apparently less than 24 hours is how long that lasted. All right, so to recap, the S-curve, not a great layout, didn't like it. The straight shot back, version 2, I don't know, didn't look like there was enough thought put into the design. And what I've always really wanted was to parallel, that the exhaust pipe parallel the transmission mount frame. And so that's what I did. I just decided, it's more complicated to build. Doesn't look like it, but it's a lot more complicated to build. And pardon all the clamps, but, it's just fitting things up and getting everything adjusted. So sleeve tube clampy up there, modified vice grips here, slip fit here. And then what I ended up having to do is just move this jig over one set of holes. So where this would have normally been centered would have had this exhaust tip maybe in about a ½ inch. So it's not that much different than what was planned, but there's the look for what the symmetry is going to be. If you look from the center of the S in Porsche on the license plate frame over to the right, that's the dimension that'll be duplicated on the other side. So I had to shift that front muffler jig over to account for it. So everything's offset to the right to put this muffler where I want it. And then I'll just have to remark everything and move both jigs over when I do this side. And you can see I got that first piece of tube finished. It's just, again, clamped on to give me the look. But I'm really happy with this design. So, famous last words, this is where we're headed. And so now, what do I have to do? Yeah, the V-band is going to end up going ahead of the axle. And I made the point about the fact that the mufflers were closer, that was going to be a nice tidy, mount. This is not horrible, and what I think I'm going to do is try to pick up the curve of this, and not, obviously I can't duplicate it, it's not quite right, but come up with a curved component back in here to echo this design and pick up the muffler tips, as the mount at the back of the car. So there we go. And I think I better actually get to work building this and not think about the design anymore. But no, I think this looks a little bit more purposeful than either of the other designs, and I think it's more fitting with the shapes that are already in the engine bay. Okay, now I'm going to work up the angle cut for the piece that's going to go into the muffler. I decided I would try to get real accurate, just because I like to try to figure out if I can come up with techniques that work for me that I can duplicate when I know I'm trying to make stuff symmetrical. So here is what I've done. This, I'm going to bring it around over here so you can see it better. First, I've worked out the rough angle that I want. I have a 15-degree turn coming out of the header. So I should have the same 15-degree turn, plus or minus, because it's slightly going uphill, and I'm not a great geometry student. But this is a 6-inch center line radius tube, which means from the center of the radius to the center line, 6-inch center line radius. So what I did is I made up a little jig to locate this tube exactly where I can measure everything. And now I know that that's 6 inches to there. I measured over 6 inches and verified, that's going to be a slam dunk because that's obviously the curve, but getting it this way. And now I know where the center of that radius is. And so I went ahead and just put another pin here so I can use a big old protractor and put the center of that angle. These are marked. They have a very faint dead center mark on them. So if I line this protractor up right there and right there, I now know that that line is my 15-degree line. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a very little teeny mark right there. Now I do recognize that that Sharpie line is fat, and it's actually on this side of where I really want that cut to be. So now I can use our handy dandy tool. Actually move you around here this time. I've got my very faint line, and this is, as I mentioned before, the universal point at the center line tool, and now you can see it in action. I mean, you can see it, well, you can't see it, but it points right at the center. And I know that I can sand back to the exact dimension I want. So I'm going to cheat a teeny bit, and I'm going to put this line right there. So that's going to be my cut line. And I'm going to sight down this slit and mark it in a couple of other places too. So I have a line to follow when I'm cutting. And that line can now be connected with my super precise eyeball drawing. And again, this is why I tend to, you want to give yourself a little bit of room to make an error. But there is approximately my 15-degree cut on this radius. And I'm going to take it all the way around so I can follow the cut on the bandsaw. I'm going to cut kind of on that line, knowing that my real cut is sort of, my real dimension is somewhere between those two marks. So let me go cut this. And then here's one more best practice, well, one new practice that I'm going to start working with. And that is, I want this cut to be square to the tube, right? I don't want the cut to be, you know, angled this way or anything like that. And once you get this taken off, it's oftentimes difficult to figure out, you know, is it actually square? So what I did this yesterday and it worked out really well. This is a 2.5-inch OD tube. And so I've got my calipers set at 1.25 inches, half of this diameter. And what I'm going to do is I am going to scribe a line with this thing flat. I'm going to scribe a line halfway up this tube, indicating where square will be. I'm going to mark it on the inside and the outside. And so what this is going to allow me to do is always have a visual reference as I'm sanding to try to get this thing to be where I want it. So now I'm going to make a Sharpie mark on that line. And now, after I cut this, I can come back and know that I want my square to be 90 degrees to this dimension. So I'm now just going to go bandsaw this thing off and start the fitting process. What I now check is with this line pointed, you know, 90 degrees to this square. I don't know if you can hear it. It rocks a teeny bit. So this side is high, and you can see that it's not dead flat. It's pretty close, but this also gives you the ability to do this kind of a check, right? I can set this thing up, try to point it at the camera. I can set this up like this, and I can do a 90-degree check here. Can't really see it from where I am. And yeah, you can see it's tipping off this way. So this side is high, which is what we just said over here. So you can, with this line, now knowing that I want everything square to that, it makes it just a bunch easier to get the dimension correct. So I'm just going to go over and hit this on the disc sander. It makes pretty quick work of that. And now that is square to the side. And now I go back and start playing with this dimension. I now know I want that to be my angle. And it's a little tricky because the tube is curving. It's not tricky, but you know, you kind of got to eyeball this gap with this dimension. And with this set where I want it, I can see that it is just about where I want it. So I'm going to go start trying to fit this. And the joys of fitment. Because of the nature of this curve, I know that I was going to need to add a short straight section to get into here. But all I really care about now is making sure that this thing's lined up with that, and it is. And yeah, it moves a teeny bit, but I have room for that when I go to do that weld. So I'm going to go ahead and cut, you know, a couple inch long straight section, weld it onto the end of this, so I have the insert point here, and that'll lock this in. Okay, and then before I go ahead and weld anything on here, I've got the opportunity to translate this onto the other side of that U-bend. So why bother remeasuring everything when I can just copy the part? So let me put you back on the stand. I've just got a stop here to locate this line, and I've got this little angle kicked in just to contact the tube there. This is a completely symmetrical U-bend, so all I need to do is put that right here, line up the ends, and it's the same game. I'm just going to mark that line, and that's my cut line. So then I can go ahead and weld that one. Just a quick little fuse tack. Cool. I'm just going to go ahead and get a couple tacks on here. I'm not going to final weld all this stuff until all the pieces are put together and I know how everything's going to look. So let's just get some stronger tacks on here so I can manipulate this thing without worrying about it breaking. And that, as they say, isn't going anywhere. All right, so now we have our muffler side of things. Let's go fit this. And the sharp-eyed amongst you may have noticed that the muffler was not in position when I was playing with it before, and I caught that. I noticed that, went back and refit this tube to make sure I wasn't missing something important. And the good news is that if I move it back, insert this, and put it back where I want it, I don't have that gap. But now you can see what we got. We got that. So I don't need to add any more extensions. Okay, we're back into the car real quick. Just to show you, I decided I didn't want to screw around with flipping things around all the time. So I remade the front muffler jig, and it's wider by the amount that it needs to be wider. And mostly I was excited just to see how far I could put things together to get a look at how this is going to turn out. And if I climb the ladder and give you the bird's eye view of the engine bay now, you can see those tubes look really pretty even. And yeah, there's some stickers on some stuff and there's clamps and things, but the overall general vibe is it looks the way I wanted it to look. I really am happy with the way that parallels the mount frame. And forgetting the clamps that you're seeing on the bottom, there's our rear view. And so there's our offset trans, which I think is hysterical. I like that. But that's good progress right there. I'm calling that really good progress. Happy with that. So now I got to get some measurements and work out how I want to support this rear mount. Oh, I also am going to look into a slip fit, like a swaged out pipe setup that I can shove that in there, because as it turns out, this is right about the same level as the base of this frame, a little bit higher. But if I put a V-bend in there, they're heavy, and it hangs down, I don't know, maybe 3/8 of an inch lower than the rest of the drivetrain platform, which I'm not thrilled about. It's not that big a deal, but I'm going to look into a slip fit and maybe just like a spring clamp setup, which is very kind of like race car. I think that looks cool. But I think that's going to do it for this episode. I really appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think about this exhaust design. And sorry for putting you through 3 iterations, but you know, I think you've come to expect that here at the Red Barn. So again, thanks for watching. Everybody take care. We'll talk to you again real soon. And oh, don't forget, the kitties are coming right up. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, my wife Lori and I are going to go do a kitty check-in here this morning. It's going to be another hot one. Let's see how the little monsters are. Oh, there's Mama J, and there's Toddy, and there's the Punch Man. Oh, here comes Smash, and there's Vesper. Hi, everybody.
Good morning, my little ones.
Now this is sort of mid-morning for them. So they've already had their breakfast. And yeah, they're kind of quiet still.
They just woke up. Why didn't you wake them up?
Yep. And as usual, little hot Toddy's coming in for the close-up. Hi there. And Smash. Smash wants to come say hi this time. Hi, buddy.
Oh yeah, it's a lot hotter outside than here.
Yeah, it's nice and cool in here still. So let him go in and out, but keep the door closed. Hi there, buddy. What are you doing? Yeah, and so the topic for today is how quickly these guys can reproduce. So, as you saw last time, Julep, after only about 8 weeks after giving birth, was ready for more babies, was in heat. And interesting to note, female cats, kittens even, can get pregnant at about 5 months old.
4.
Oh, 4? No, I thought it was the...
Girls can get pregnant in 4. Boys can impregnate at 5 months.
Ah, okay, there you go. So my wife is correcting me. Tell me something else that's something that's not new. Girls can get pregnant at 4 months, and the boys, this little maniac, could potentially impregnate a female at only 5 months. So again, we got to spay and neuter, and we got to get this cat population under control. So look at the little man. Look at that little man. Hi. Hi. What do you say, bud? He's such a cute boy. Oh, you gonna get me? Pa, 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 pa. Oh, yep. And what's so nice about these guys is they play with absolutely no claws out. Completely soft paws when they bat at us.
Yeah, they're sweet kitties.
They're such great little kitties. Oh yeah, you can see.
Look how big they are.
Yeah, they're getting really big.
So what is the date today? Are we
10 weeks?
Are we a week and a half away from their spay and neuter date?
Yep, next Sunday. Today is Thursday.
Hi, Mama.
And they go in on Sunday the 21st for spay and neuter.
Yeah.
And then back here for recovery, and then down to Morty's. And little Julep. Julep may be leaving sooner than that.
She is still nursing. The babies, she's allowing them to nurse. She hasn't weaned them yet. And the vets that do our spay and neuter would like to have her milk dried up before she comes in.
Yep.
So she may have to be physically separated from them beforehand.
Right, so we're working with Morty's to figure that out. Look at the Smasher. My bud. Punch is ruining my shop shoes. And everybody loves a good box. Vesper's out there just hanging out in box. Oh yeah. A little quiet morning. It's going to be another...
Just woke them up.
Yeah. They're being quiet.
So, you know, for their entire life, they have lived in this one small room, which is ideal for kittens, actually. But they've gotten to the point now that they've outgrown the room.
Yeah.
They are going to be very excited to have a lot of running room when they get to Morty's.
Yeah, once they get to Morty's, they go into a room that's about this same size, just to get them acclimated, and they have windows in the rooms. They can see out into the lounge, and the other cats can come up to the door and smell them under the door. And once they're sort of acclimated, then the door gets open and they become part of the free roaming pack at Morty's, and then they can cruise around like even more giant maniacs. And boy, oh boy, these guys are just the greatest. Hi, bud. Everybody's just being really quiet. Oh, and the girls are roughhousing. Playing in the box. All right, so we got one more week, this episode and next week, and then they're going to be spayed and neutered and on their way to their forever homes.
Well, maybe then you'll take your camera down to Morty's.
Yep. Then we probably will.
See,
Probably will
the
go
kitties at Morty's.
Probably will go down to Morty's and and give you a view of that. But that's going to do it for these guys for this week. So remember, as always, say it with me, support your local rescue.
And spay and neuter.
Thanks, everybody.